Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa and I read, and welcome to another video. And this is going to be my summer wrap up. I have not done a wrap up in a few months, so I thought I would do the last 3 months, so June, July, and August. I read 21 things in the past 3 months, which is pretty good. I wasn't overly trying, so I'm happy with that. Out of those 21 books, I did DNF 5 of them. I do include it sometimes in my stats, but I DNF'd 5. I had 2 3 stars, 7 4 stars, and then also 7 5 stars. So let's just get on with the reviews. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Iron Raven by Julie Kagawa. It's the first thing I read in June, and I do have a dedicated review for this, so I probably won't go too much into detail. But this is book 8 in the Iron Face series. The author writes these in kind of groups of trilogies. So this is like the 3rd trilogy in this series. So it goes the first trilogy, a one-off book, and then a second trilogy. And this is the beginning of the 3rd. And in this one, we follow Puck. He has been in every single book, I think, in the entire series. And this is from his perspective. There's a new threat to the Never Never. And so he teams up with some of the kings and queens of the Never Never to fight this new evil. And these stories are very like an adventure story. It's a found family, usually the same characters, sometimes new characters, sometimes old characters, and they usually travel around figuring out where the evil has gone or how they can defeat the evil. And so there's just a new threat in the Never Never. I really enjoy these stories. I have a soft spot for this series. Book 1, we follow Megan. If you want to start at the beginning, Megan Chase, and she is half fae, and she goes into the Never Never with Puck, our main character in this one, to save her brother. And the story kind of begins from there. So if you like fairies, if you like brand new fantasy worlds, it's kind of an urban fantasy because we have the Never Never, which is the fairy world, and then also the real world in these stories. So it's an urban fantasy. If you like YA, fantasy, urban fantasy, romances, adventure stories, unique characters, you probably will like the series. The next book I'm going to talk about is Restore Me by Tahereh Mafi. I actually ended up DNFing this book. I quickly kind of skim read the trilogy, mostly just sections that I really enjoyed, like the first 3 books of the Shatter Me series. I remembered I really enjoyed that trilogy. It was a lot of fun, and rereading some excerpts, I still have a fondness for that trilogy, but when I moved on to Restore Me, I just was not excited about the direction it was going. I couldn't quite get behind Juliet. I couldn't quite believe that she was leader material, being a teenager in this brand new kind of, I guess, society. She's like 16 or 17, and I don't know, I just wasn't quite interested, so I just decided not to keep on reading. I think I read like 60 pages. It read really fast, but I just wasn't interested anymore, so I decided to not finish it. The next book I read is Neon Gods by Katee Roberts. This is a romance. I think she's normally indie romance erotic writer. This is my first one by her, and I don't think I'll keep reading her stuff because it's just not my type of romance that I would normally pick up, but I picked up because it's a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I usually like those. I really enjoy those. This leans a lot more erotic than romance, and so for that reason, it wasn't truly my favorite. I did really like the relationship. I liked the development of that and how Hades was clearly smitten. It was definitely a grumpy sunshine romance where Hades is the grump and Persephone is the sunshine. I felt like Persephone didn't really do anything when she was at the Hades side, I guess like the lower part of Olympus. When she like met Hades, she didn't really do anything. She just like hung around at his house, and I kind of wish we got more insight into her character. But we didn't get that development. And then the fantasy element, I guess, or not fantasy, but just the main conflict, I guess you can say, when it comes to like Zeus and Hades and Persephone, just kind of fell flat for me. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. The next book I read was The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. This is Midnight Tales and Dangerous Magic. These are all fairy tale retelling short stories, I guess you can say. There's, I think, 5 or 6 stories in here. They're all retellings of different fairy tales. There's some beautiful illustrations in here, of course. Some of them are inspired from fairy tales, and you can tell that they're kind of like a direct retelling or origin story. Some of them are a mixture, like I think the first one is kind of a mixture of Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella, I think, which is kind of interesting. I really enjoyed this collection. Most of the stories I gave 4 stars. There was one that was my favorite. It was called Witch of Duva, I think. And that was a Hansel and Gretel retelling, and I was like so shocked by it that I just couldn't help but give it 5 stars. And then the last one I gave 3 stars because I think I was just petering up with the story. So overall I am giving this 4 stars. This is all set in the Grisha universe. So if you've read Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows and things like that, you'll probably enjoy this. And I recommend it to anyone. Like you don't need any real backstory in this series. There's no need. They're just fairy tales. They just happen to be set in this world. There is an appearance of the Darkling, which I did really enjoy. It was interesting. It was like the last story. So I do recommend it to anyone who wants to read fairy tale. They're definitely dark fairy tales. There's some like disturbing things that happen in here. So I guess know that going in. Disturbing is maybe the wrong word, but they're dark fairy tales, right? So I really enjoy this collection. The next 2 books I read was Fated and Claimed by Rebecca Zanetti. Fated was kind of a reread. I was just really in the mood for like an alpha male vampire urban fantasy or paranormal romance, and so I gave Fated a try, I think last year, and it didn't quite work for me, but for whatever reason it really worked for me this time around. I gave it 4 stars. We follow Kara and Talon, and Kara, she's a single mother. She is a scientist, specifically like botany, like her science is involving plants. And Talon just like shows up at her house one day and is like, I need to take you away because there's people after you, and she's really resistant, but like he's actually there to help her. Kara is a single mother, and her daughter has like special abilities, and that's why the evil vampires are after Kara and Janie, that's the girl's name. And so Talon is there to basically protect her, and it is marriage of convenience, alpha male romance, and I really enjoyed it this time around. It was just like, going in, I knew not to expect too much from it. It was kind of campy and silly, but it really worked for me this time around, so I did enjoy it. I tried book 2, and it was just pretty much the same thing, and I just couldn't be bothered. I was hoping maybe something new and fresh. That one was between Emma and Dodge is like the leader of the good side of the vampires, basically over the entire realm in a way, because there's other paranormal creatures. I didn't like it. I ended up DNFing it because it was the same, it felt like the same romance, because Emma is Kara's sister, but she is also involved in science, like she's a scientist, specifically genetics, and the romance itself felt like the exact same, and I didn't feel like reading the same thing again. So I DNF'd it. I gave the second one, Claimed, like 3 stars because it was about the same. The next one is A Darkness, Strange and Lovely by Suzanne Dennard. This is a DNF. It's because I've read this book before and I loved it the first time. The first time I gave it 5 stars, and I've been trying to reread this book in order to move on to book 3, and it's been like too long now. Every time I try rereading this, I just get bored because I know the story is not new or fresh for me anymore. And so I just decided to give up on this series. I feel really bad saying that because I really loved this series when I first started, but it's just been too long now. I do recommend it. It's called the Strange and Something Deadly series. It's a trilogy. It's an urban fantasy. It's about Eleanor, and it's a historical fiction as well, so set like in the 1800s. And she lives in Philadelphia, I think. There have been zombie attacks, and she gets involved with the spear hunters who fight the zombies. And it's her story. There's a romance in here, which is great. It's kind of like a found family, urban fantasy, I guess you can say. So I do really love it, but it's just been too long to continue, so I've just decided to not carry on. The next book I read was Stormfront by Jim Butcher. It's my first Jim Butcher And I really loved this a lot. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I almost have more fonder memories having read it than during it. I ended up giving it a 4 stars. And I think that's accurate because I think I was hoping for a little bit more, but I still really enjoyed it. So this is part of the Dresden Files. This is book 1. In Dresden, he's a wizard or a warlock, and he solves mysterious crimes that are unexplained, and he's, really hard. He's not doing well. He doesn't make a lot of money, so he's really like living paycheck to paycheck. Every once in a while he gets a job with the police. I think it's set in Chicago, which is kind of cool. So this one, he's taken on by the police to solve this murder that's very mysterious. And he has some like relationships with some women. There's kind of this hinted possibility with the female cop, obviously, who's aware of the mythical side of the world. Her name is Mafi. There was another woman introduced that's a potential love interest, and it's just a lot of fun. I like this world a lot. There is like a wizard council that kind of oversees other wizards or warlocks, I should say, and it's clear that Dresden has a past and something bad and tragic has happened in the past, so they kind of keep their eye on him. He also has like a magical like skull that helps him make potions, and I just like really fell in love with it. And I think it's because it gives me a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel vibes, where it is a mystery and you're solving the mystery alongside Dresden, but it also takes place in urban fantasy. You get to see him do magic and solve a murder mystery along the way. So I'm really excited to keep reading it. I can see myself really falling in love with Dresden. I think his first name is Harry, and Mafi, and just solving murders alongside him. He's a grumpy hero. It's very funny too. It's comical and lighthearted, which is great. So it's definitely something I recommend if you like murder mysteries, but if you want like a fantasy magical twist, I definitely recommend it. The next thing I read was The Case of the Missing Marquess by Nancy Springer. I read this because it was turned into a Netflix show, the Enola Holmes movie, and I really enjoyed the movie a lot. I've watched it a couple times, and it's based on this book series. There's 4 books. It leans towards a middle grade. Enola, she is the sister of Sherlock Holmes, and she was brought up by her mother. Her mother goes missing, and she decides to strike out on her own. She runs away from her brothers. She has 2 brothers, and she is the ward of the oldest brother since her mother ran away. And it's about her trying to solve the mystery of why her mother left or what happened to her. And she kind of gets swept up in a case with a Marquess who goes missing as well, who's around her age. And I gave this 3 stars. I listened to this on audiobook, and it was very similar to the movie. I would recommend the movie more, but I did really enjoy the banter between her and the Marquess. You can see the potential of a romance between the 2 of them, even though they're quite young, even though it's like a middle grade YA book. So I did enjoy their banter quite a bit in the book, more so than in the movie. But I like the movie a lot too. So I don't know, it's hard to recommend. And the mystery wasn't even much of a mystery when it comes to the Marquess side. I almost wish I physically read it because it kind of just washed over me a little bit. And I think it's also because I already knew the story for the most part. In the end of the book, she doesn't find her mother, but there's more books in the series, so I anticipate her finding her mother probably at the end of the series. Where in the movie, like, we get a glimpse of her mother. It's set in like, I guess, the 1800s because of Sherlock Holmes and everything. So the fact that Enola strikes out on her own without any man to guide her, I guess you can say, was really cool to see and enjoyable. I always like a really good feminist story set in this time, so I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. First Julia Quinn, and not my first Regency romance or historical romance, but definitely my first full-length one. The only ones I've read before were short stories, so this was a pleasant surprise. I really enjoyed this, and I was more surprised because I've already seen the TV show and I wasn't sure if I would enjoy it as a book, but I really did. It's basically the same but different also, I feel like the show is a lot more graphic when it comes to the sexual content, where there is sexual content in here, but it's not quite the same and is not as often as in the show. So the show is definitely making this series a lot edgier than it is, and I think I like it for that in a way. I still love the TV show a lot, but it's kind of nice to see the same story but just a little bit lighter, I guess you can say. It's not nearly as dark as the show, but there are dark themes in here. It's the romance is between Simon and Daphne, and Simon is definitely a brooding hero. He's also a rake, but his father didn't want him because he grew up with a stutter, and so his father basically disowned him. He lived on his own with his nanny. Eventually he learned to overcome his stutter, but even then, like, his father basically disowned him, and once he became older and made a name for himself by going to university and everything, he decided to disown his father as well, basically. So and his mother died in childbirth, so he didn't get to have a relationship with her mother, and so when he became Duke, he just lived a rakish life, because he's been really hardened and never really found love or anything, and he vows to never carry on the name. He vows to never fall in love and never have an heir. And then in comes Daphne. She is one of the Bridgertons. There's like 8 Bridgerton kids, and I think she might be the 5th, but she's the first female or woman to come out in the family, and so it's her season, and her and Simon decide to have a fake courtship or fake date in a way, and things happen and progress, and obviously something becomes more, and I really enjoy this. I gave this 4 stars, and there is a controversial thing in here. I'm not going to comment too much about that. I think the only thing I'm going to say is it's okay to read books that have uncomfortable situations happen in them and still like it. It's okay to read controversial situations and topics, and I think the thing that's most beautiful is that this couple still overcomes even though something like that happened. I don't think it's quite as bad as some people claim it to be, but I do believe it's still non-consensual. So know that going in, that there is like a non-consensual sexual thing that happens, which is really unfortunate, but it's complicated. I think that's all I'm going to say about it. There's other people who talk about this book if you're more curious about it, so maybe check out those videos or do a little bit of research on your own. There is a non-consensual situation that happens in here when it comes to the relationship. But I still really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. So I was in a Bridgerton mood, so I moved on to The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn, and I really enjoyed this one as well. I think I enjoyed this more, but I ended up still giving it a 4-star. We follow Anthony, and he is the eldest Bridgerton, and he always believes that he's going to die young because his father died young, and so he only plans to get married to basically just produce an heir, and he's not going to fall in love because he can't stand the idea of a broken heart or making his wife brokenhearted because he will die young. He just assumes he's going to die young because his father died young, and so he's been hardened that way. He is also a rake. He's also a rake because he's been so hurt by the death of his father, and I think he just couldn't see himself falling in love because of the death, because his parents were truly in love, and so he just can't see that for himself, especially if he isn't going to have a long life. And then in comes Kate. Her sister is coming out, and she's helping her sister come out. I forget why she kind of puts herself on the back burner. I think she decides that her sister has a good chance of finding a husband, and her family are kind of on hard times, so their family decides that this is really the younger sister's season. I think Kate is still having the season, but she's really focused on her sister. Anthony has his sights on Kate's sister, and Kate does not like that idea because he's a rake and he doesn't want her sister to be married to a rake. She wants someone good for her. So Kate and Anthony bond butt heads a lot. There's a lot of chemistry there. There's a lot of angst, which I really enjoyed. I forget why I only gave it 4 stars. I guess I wasn't quite as blown away as I thought it would be, but I did really enjoy the first half, that's for sure. The next one that I absolutely loved out of the series was An Offer from a Gentleman, also by Julia Quinn. This is the 3rd book. This is Benedict's story. I think he must be the second one. The second child, and this is a Cinderella retelling, which I absolutely loved, which I was surprised by because I thought I was getting kind of tired by Cinderella retellings, but I really enjoyed this one, and I think it's because I loved Sophie. So Sophie, she's our Cinderella. She has a evil stepmother and 2 stepsisters, and they treat her like a slave. They're on hard times, and obviously the stepmother is hardened since the father died, and so she's left with Sophie. And Sophie, out of, I guess, memory for her father, continues to serve her stepmother and stepsisters, and she doesn't mind it so much because at least she has a place to be, and the other servants take care of her, of course. And then one night, stepmother and stepsisters go out to, I think it was a bridgeton party, and the servants come and whisk Sophie to get ready and send her off to the same ball, and it's a masquerade, so that's why they decide to send her. And she meets Benedict there, and they have a very romantic moment. She has the mask on, he doesn't know who she is, but they have a really I thought it was like a really romantic moment. I really enjoyed that scene a lot. And then she runs away because it's Cinderella. The thing that was interesting about this story is like the Cinderella story is only half of the book, and then we get the aftermath of everything. And since that one night, Benedict has been searching for this mystery girl, not knowing who she is. Unfortunately, Sophie's stepmother and stepsisters find out, and they send her packing, which I thought was really interesting. And so the story continues. Obviously, Sophie and Benedict meet up again. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, even though Benedict was a tool for some of it. Like, he wouldn't listen to Sophie, which really bothered me. But Sophie really was amazing. She was so strong, and she stood by her principles no matter what Benedict would say, which I really appreciated. So this was definitely like a class difference romance, which I really enjoyed. I didn't think I was going to like that, but I do really like it. And then also a Cinderella retelling, obviously. I wish there was more groveling at the end. I definitely think that ought to have been more groveling, but I still really loved it, and I liked it more than the other ones, so I did end up giving it 5 stars still, even though I have some nitpicky things. The next book I read was Ive Got Your Number by Sophie Kinsella. Sophie Kinsella is always amazing. I always love her books so much. I actually listened to this on audiobook, and that was a great way because it really reads like a rom-com. So if you're wanting like a rom-com audiobook, any Sophie Kinsella book is pretty good for that. And you can definitely tell it's from that era because I don't know, I just love rom-com so much. I wish there were more of them out in the world. But anyways, we follow Poppy, and she's engaged, and she's like at this hotel. I forget why. She was at some kind of function thing, and her wedding ring goes missing. She's engaged to a professor, and she loses this ring, and she's trying to find it, and she's constantly badgering like the hotel staff. And in the meantime, she also loses her phone, which is insane, but she happens to find a phone in the garbage. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna use this phone. Someone obviously didn't want it, and so she gives like the hotel staff the phone number so they have a way to contact her. Somehow she gets in contact with the owner of the phone, and they kind of strike up a relationship. She somehow convinces him to let her keep the phone because she needs it in order to find this ring. This ring is like a family heirloom and everything, and she's like freaking out. And it's about her developing a relationship with this man. I will say there's no cheating, so don't worry about that. There's no cheating whatsoever. But it's mostly about her, like, discovering whether or not she still has feelings for the man that she's engaged to. The more she thinks about it, the more uncomfortable she is with him and his family. And I think she was really hoping to find a place in this family because I think her family has passed on, like she's pretty much on her own. But it's her developing relationship with Sam, who's the businessman whose phone this is. So she helps him with his business stuff. She snoops around, of course, because it's a Sophie Kinsella book and there's always snooping around or doing things the female character should not be doing. It was a lot of fun. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I was obsessed with this book until the very end. The very end just dragged on. Like, they carried out this plot line till the very end, and there was like a wedding crash scene and stuff like that, like The Graduate style almost, and I was just like, okay, this is a little much. I know it's a rom-com, but come on. So I was kind of like rolling my eyes by the end, but the journey of the story I absolutely loved. I really enjoyed it. It was funny. I'm always laughing in Sophie Kinsella books, so I definitely recommend. The next book I'm going to talk about is P.S. I Like You by Kasie West. I listened to this on audiobook as well. I listened to a lot of audiobooks and I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. It was really cute. It's a YA contemporary romance, and I definitely realized like I really enjoy YA contemporary romances. But we follow Lily, and she is a teenager. She has a crush. She's really into music. She tries to write her own songs. And she's part of a big family. She is the second of 4 kids. So she has a lot of responsibilities at home. She has 2 younger brothers that she sometimes has to watch. And this is a You've Got Mail retelling, which was amazing. I always love those. You've Got Mail is one of my favorite movies of all time. And so it was kind of a cute take on the story set in a high school, a YA setting. So she starts writing notes on the desk in her biology class, I think, and someone writes back, and so they're corresponding that way. Eventually they move on to notes, but it's her discovering who this person is. In the meantime, she kind of starts falling for her nemesis at school, so she's conflicted with the boy, her nemesis, her feelings for him, and then also her feelings for the person who's writing her notes. And I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars. Like, I think it just really worked for me. This is what I needed at the time. I've been noticing that audiobooks have been really working for me, and I don't know if I'm just being overly generous with my ratings. It might be that, like, I'm wondering if audiobooks kind of are covering a lot of sins. If I was physically reading it, maybe I'd be more critical, but I just really enjoyed this. I always like YA contemporary romance, so the fact that it was a little bit juvenile didn't bother me, so I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. The next few books are 5 stars, so just know just know that going in, they're all pretty much audiobooks, but for whatever reason, I was obsessed with them. The next one is Royals by Rachel Hawkins. This is another contemporary YA romance, but it's about royalty. We follow Daisy, and her sister is engaged to the Crown Prince of Scotland. So her sister has been in the limelight. Is that the right word? She's been in the spotlight a lot because she's engaged to the prince. So Ellie is like out over in Scotland, but Daisy is back in the United States, I think specifically Florida. Somehow she gets swept up into the media side of things. Her ex-boyfriend sells pictures, so obviously she's upset by that. But there's rumors going around about Daisy possibly wanting to date the Crown Prince's younger brother. So because there's all these rumors happening, the people who work for the royal family of Scotland convince her to come over to Scotland so they can smooth things out and kind of have their eye on her. So reluctantly she agrees, and it's about her getting to know the royal family, getting to know the royal teens, or like the elite, I guess you can say, of Scotland. She meets Miles. I forget what his title is. I don't know if he's like an earl or viscount or something like that, who really cares for the roguish young prince, who kind of looks out for him. And because of the rumors, he does not like Daisy at all. And so there's some tension between her and Miles. And I thought this was a lot of fun. It gave me a lot of What a Girl Wants vibes by Amanda Bynes, that movie from early 2000s. Even though this is about royalty and that one's more about politics, it gave me all that vibes of, you know, American Girl going over to England or Scotland in this case and getting swept up in the politics and royalty of there. And so it was a lot of fun. I liked the romance a lot, so I gave it 5 stars. It was fun. The next one I read was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I've never read this book before, I'm ashamed to say, but I haven't. I listened to this on audiobook and this really worked for me too. I think sometime I would like to reread some, maybe just like the Simon Snow excerpts. I found that stuff a little bit confusing because I couldn't quite tell which was the actual Simon Snow stuff and which was the fan art, you can say. But this story, we follow Kath, and she's an extreme introvert. She's almost socially awkward. She has social anxiety, and she's going to university for the first time. She was hoping to live with her twin sister, who she loves dearly, but her sister doesn't want to live with her. Her sister wants to kind of strike out on her own, which makes Kath really upset. But she does it anyway. She moves in with a new roommate, and it's really hard for her. She's really struggling with the new social situation. She finds everything really hard. Talking to people, just going to the cafeteria is hard for her. But the one thing she absolutely loves is Simon Snow. And Simon Snow is basically like a Harry Potter series, book series, and she writes fan fiction of the Simon Snow stuff. And it's about her adjusting to university. It's about her love for Simon Snow and her fan writing or fan art. It's about her possibly falling in love. There's also a lot of family drama that happens in here. Is about her making amends with her sister and the dynamics between her and her sister, and also her and her father. Her father struggles with mental health as well, and it's about a lot of these things. A lot happens in here, and this leans a lot more contemporary. It's really about Kath and her growth throughout this story. There is a romance in here, and the romance is really sweet. It's adorable, for sure. Everyone seems to love it, and I definitely loved it as well. But it was more about Kath and her journey in university and kind of discovering herself. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a really good coming-of-age story, but set in university. So I gave it 5 stars. It was amazing and got me in a Harry Potter mood, that's for sure. Since I was in the YA contemporary mood, I decided to pick up The Distance Between Us. I really enjoyed the previous Kasie West I read, so I wanted to pick up this one, and I really love this one too. I was just such in a YA contemporary mood. This one we follow Cayman, and she is poor, I guess you can say. She's on harder times with her mother. It's just her and her mother runs a doll store. Like, her mother sells ornament dolls, porcelain dolls, I guess. And that's all they sell is those dolls. And they live in this small town that is kind of like a resort town where a lot of wealthy people come to vacation, I guess. And so that's how they make their living, is this shop. And Cayman helps down the shop all the time because the shop is not doing so great. They live in an apartment upstairs, and it's about her developing a relationship with Xander, and he is his family is extremely wealthy. And the reason why there's a lot of tension between them is because Cayman's mother always said, like, don't trust the rich, don't get involved, they don't understand us. And so when she starts having feelings for Xander, she's really hesitant. She doesn't tell her mom. She keeps it secret. And I thought this book was really well done because you can really see the difference between the two characters. It was very clear that Cayman lived a lot differently than Xander. It was really clear that Xander's family was extremely rich. They own a lot of hotels around the world. And it's kind of expected of Xander to kind of maybe take over the business when he's older. So I did really enjoy that dynamic. I loved Xander so much. He was so soft. It was really clear that he was like so smitten with Cayman, and she just was oblivious. But I really enjoyed that. I thought it was super adorable. Things get resolved at the end. Like, it was good. It wasn't bad or anything. But Cayman eventually meets her grandparents, who she's been estranged from. And I thought their relationship developed really quickly. They were just all of a sudden okay with each other. I would have thought that she would have been a little bit more hesitant, but that's my only criticism, is that one thing. But I understand why, because it was getting near the book and there probably wasn't enough time to quite develop kind of awkward feelings towards like being chummy and everything. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this. And I always like Kasie West because it does lean a lot more romance, which is what I prefer. I do like a good contemporary story where it focuses on the female characters, but I do like a good just YA romance. So I definitely enjoyed this and I gave it 5 stars. The next 2 books I read were rereads. I was just in a pirate mood. So I read Neverland by Anna Katmore and then Pan's Revenge, which is book 2. I don't know. I just really wanted to read this series. I was making recommendation videos and it made me want to read it because I recommended this book and I do recommend it. This duology, I don't know if you can get it from your library, but it's an indie series. It's YA, it is fantasy, and we follow Angel or Angelina. She has 2 younger sisters who are a lot younger. They're like 4 years old or something, and she absolutely loves them. She takes care of them. Her family's quite well off, but when the nanny left, she convinced her parents to let her just take care of her 2 sisters because she just loves them and adores them. So she does that. But one day while babysitting, she like falls off her balcony, and instead of landing on the ground, she falls into Neverland. You can probably guess who saves her. Well, of course, Peter Pan does. And it's about her trying to find her way back home. She gets to know Peter and the Lost Boys and Tinkerbell and Captain Hook, and it's the romance between her and Captain Hook. So this is a fantasy romance YA. I just love it. I love this romance so much. It's great if you want a pirate romance. I definitely recommend. And I continued with book 2, which is definitely more fantastical, I guess. She loses her memories, so Captain Hook, he's like determined to find her and rescue her, and it's about his journey trying to find her again and how to get out of Neverland to Angelina, which I love. I love Captain Hook in this one. He's just so soft, and it's not gross or anything. Like, he's about the same age as Angelina, so it does really work. And yeah, I just love this duology. It's just so much fun. So if you want a fantasy romance, here's a recommendation. I DNF'd it because I just didn't feel like continuing. It wasn't that I didn't like what I was reading. It's just like I kind of had enough of my rereads, so that's why I stopped reading book 2. Since I was in the pirate mood and I was trying to find other pirate romances, I picked up A Pirate's Love by Johanna Lindsey, and this did not go over well. I DNF'd it for sure, and it's because there was a rape scene in here right away, and it made me feel really uncomfortable. I couldn't get past the first one, and I looked up reviews, and I learned that it just continues throughout the whole book, which I did not like, and like, ew, like, I didn't like that. So I decided not to read it. So don't read this. I'm just so surprised because I know Johanna Lindsey is quite loved, but this is not good. Don't read it. No, I don't recommend it. Moving on to a really good historical romance that I really loved, which definitely made up for it, is Duchess by Day, Mistress by Night by Stacey Reid. I listened to this on audiobook, and I did really enjoy listening to it on audiobook. We followed Georgiana. She's a duchess, she's a widow, and she's really uncontent with her life. It's been many years. She's probably like in her late 20s, maybe even mid 20s. Like, she might be like 26 or something. So she's still quite young. It's possible for her to remarry if she wanted to, but I don't think she does. She's quite happy being her own person, but she's really unsure what she wants to do. So she thinks about taking a lover, which I'm gathering is maybe quite common back then, where like a widow's take on a lover and decide not to get married. So in comes Mr. Rhys Tremaine. He is called the broker, and he deals secrets on the black market. He's part of the underworld. He's not part of the same society as Georgiana. Their paths cross because her maid goes missing. It was actually the nanny for her son. She does have a son, And her brother, I think, seeks him out to see if he can gather information about this nanny who kind of ran away. And so he helps her, but of course they're both intrigued with each other. And then later on, her son goes missing and she does use his services again. And the attraction continues, and as payment, he asks her to help his sisters come out in society. So since he is part of the underworld, you know, deals in the black market, he's not part of her society, but he really wants his sisters to do well. You can really tell that he has a soft spot for his family, and the only reason why he deals secrets is because their family were on really hard times, and he really needed to take care of his family, and the only reason he decided to go this way because he didn't know how else to help his family. And so he is really well off. He's made money for himself. He's secure, and his daughters are secure as well, but he really wants them to be settled down. So I really enjoyed this one. He was clearly like so in love with her, which is definitely something that I love. He was kind of a brooding hero, I guess you can say. I did really like seeing him doing his work in the underground when he was trying to help find her son, and I kind of wish we got more of that. And I've come to learn that I really do like a dark hero in historical romance, so this was no exception. It wasn't really that dark, but like there were some things that happened and it was really good, and I really loved the romance, and so I definitely recommend it. I think I gave it 5 stars, but it's more like 4.5. The like ending just was like not amazing, I guess. But sometimes I feel that way with historical romance, where like the final scene of them finally coming together isn't like amazing. So I think I kind of felt that way too. The rest of the book I absolutely loved, so definitely recommend. That was a lot of books, and I'm really tired. It's been almost an hour. So yeah, those are all the books I've read in the past 3 months. 21 of them, some DNFs, but a lot of 5 stars and a lot of 4 stars. So I think DNFing works because then I don't read any 1 stars. I don't want to read a 1 star. So yes, those are all the books I've read. If you've read any of these books before, please comment down below. Love to know your thoughts and opinions about them. Did you like them? Did you not like them? I'd love to have a conversation with you in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. If you have not done so, you can follow me on Goodreads and Instagram. And you know what? I want you to keep reading. Bye.